Hey, welcome to Creative Blog. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on Magma.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. And today,
We have with us Millie Holten. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a joy.
hi.
Well,
Hello.
we both saw your film that screened at Nouns Fest about about kissing at
Oh,
the door.
Yes.
So funny. Everybody
Thank you.
laughed.
Yeah,
Thank
it's a
God.
really good short. It's just so silly and fun and unexpected. It's very surprising too.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I wasn't able to attend because if you can't tell by my really good accent work, I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and the flight is crazy expensive. And also, I was in the middle of a work conference, so unfortunately, I couldn't go. But I got to hear about it from Mike Greeny, who is another Australian animator that went over there, and he was messaging me, your short did really well. So I was like, hell yeah, just from the other side of a silent phone. So that's very nice to hear from real people as well.
Yeah, I just remember feeling like, wow, you have a very natural, fun, awkward way of writing dialogue in between characters that I think is hard for a lot of people to nail down. I'm curious, have you always written and done comedy, and like where did you get your start making kind of like funny stuff?
Oh, thank you. I'm from the improv and sketch world, so live comedy
okay.
is where I started before anything else. And I think you can tell when you watch anything of that I've done, that I've written and it's been made, is like there's a lot of like I'll write a script, but also I'm really chuffed to let talented people, like the cast members, are usually my friends, and that was the case in the Midnight Kiss. I was one of them. I was the girl, and my friend Josh was the boy, and so we've performed together for like 8 or so years. So yeah, it was we just stuck to the script, but also are very comfortable like riffing and playing with those silences and all of that. Oh, I gotta get drawing, my goodness. All right, a knight with the pointiest nose of all time. Sorry.
Well,
I was enthralled conversation wise.
what percentage would you say in your cartoons are like script versus improvised performance?
Ooh, I'd say the structure is always pretty firm, and if you had to like divvy it up at the end, probably be like 80% scripted, 20% improvised, and then the animatics and storyboards always are like kind of led by the timing of those improvisations as well.
Cool. That's actually pretty close to how I make cartoons. That's cool.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I really like improvise stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if we are rivals or friends, Sean, because you have a cartoon called Bodyhead, and I have a cartoon called Longhead, and I don't know if either can live while the other survives.
Oh no, it's a battle. We might have to draw that at some
Yeah,
point.
I think we definitely have to.
The battle of the something heads.
Yes, exactly. I think
yeah.
yours would win. I don't think it would be a competition.
I don't know. We'll see. I feel like there is something mysteriously powerful about Longhead.
Powerful is very
like
funny.
like there's like a naive undefeatableness about somebody who's like not really trying but is accidentally like I don't know whether it's like the world is working in their favor or whatever. But I was like watching that the one where he's about to get assassinated.
Oh, yes.
And there's just something about the way he exists in this world that
it always works out for old Longhead, doesn't it?
It's funny. It's very slapsticky in a way. It reminds me. Have you seen the Pink Panther, The Return of the Pink Panther with Peter Sellers?
No, I actually haven't. Is that lots of physical comedy?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies, and there's a whole scene where like basically there's a lot of like assassins hired to kill him
Oh,
because
great.
and so Yeah, they're all at a party and they're trying to get him, and obviously nothing works. He's still alive.
Oh, yes, to this day he
You
remains.
remind V of one of their favorite movies. What does that what does that feel like?
That's very special, V. I feel very comforted.
I want to
feel
feel
like
like
Belle
that.
the Ball. Yeah. My knight is looking more like a wrestler, but I'm going to stick at it.
So, us going to Nouns Fest, and we one of the reasons why we went is because we interviewed the creators of Nouns Fest, and then afterwards
cool.
we went to go see what was going on. But I think it's serendipitous because I accidentally had stumbled into one of your streams once on Twitch.
Yes. Yeah.
A long time ago, and you were drawing some I think you were doing some long-haired comics, maybe.
Yeah, for a while, I gave twitching a go. Yeah, it was more a way like I was drawing long heads by myself for 6 hours a night anyway. So I'm like, oh, let's try and make something a bit more productive out of this, aside from a comic about a long head at the end. And I kind of kept that up for maybe 3 or 4 months, not too long. But yeah, Sean very, very kindly, I think, stumbled in. And did you do a little raid? Does my memory serve me correct?
I might have
Oh my
raided.
god, so generous.
What
a guy.
Yeah, I'm so generous. And I just trusted my audience with you blindly. I saw that you had a character with a head that was shaped differently from normal, and I found some kinship in that immediately. Now, before we get too deep into Longhead, which I'm sure we'll get into all the nooks and crannies, I'd like to sort of start at the beginning of your art journey. You said you did kind of comedy first, or was it kind of like art and comedy running side by side? Like where did you get your start adding art to it?
I was doing comedy definitely first. I was a drawing kid, as I'm sure you both were as well. I was doing my little drawings in a sketchbook. They weren't very good though, and I never really, outside of maybe I stopped during high school actually, and then did live comedy and screenwriting at university or college, as you guys would say. And then over COVID, my friend Josh, who is the voice of the boy in Midnight Kiss, he decided to make an anthology comic with a bunch of comedians drawing, and he's like, I don't know if you draw, but do you want to do this? And I was like, I once drew. In the past, I drew. Why not? It's something to do in these trying times. And I loved it, immediately. Because prior to that, I was doing a lot of film sketches or sketches on stage, not sketches, drawing sketches, comedy on stage. And yeah, just a way to put out comedic content that tells a story and is visual, but without having to film it and edit it or get a crew or anything like that. I immediately fell in love and was incredibly obsessed with making lots of comics. And it just opened a gateway that I really never considered prior to my friend telling me to do that.
And your gateway into animation, did you just decide to start making it move, or is there someone that do you animate, or is your friend animating it and you're storyboarding it? How does that work?
I am recently animating, so I animated Midnight Kiss. That was the first thing that I've animated. But prior to that, no. The Longhead animations, that came about, that was kind of the first project. And that came about from the EP, Dan emailing me after seeing the Longhead comics. I'm sorry to jump ahead to Longhead. You said to wait, but it's relevant to the story, so I have to disobey, unfortunately.
Breaking the rules.
I'm breaking the rules. Oh no, don't kick me off. So yeah, the EP Dan emailed me and said, what are your screen plans for Longhead? Of which there were none. But I said, so many. I have so many ideas. As you have to do. And eventually, we got some funding to turn it into an animation, and that was my first go into it. And now I can animate somewhat, but very comfortable storyboarding and directing, less so making the move. I still prefer others to do that because it's such a crazy skill that I need to learn more about.
I think it's really smart though, the way that you did Midnight Kiss, because it's the right amount. It's you don't have too much, and it doesn't distract from how funny the dialogue is. And
that's very kind.
I was also looking at your website earlier. You went to university for writing, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. can you tell us like a little bit about what was the best thing about going to university? Like what was your number one takeaway learning writing? Because Sean and I, we went to school for drawing, so I don't know about you, Sean, but I didn't really have any writing classes, and
they
so
wouldn't let me.
they wouldn't
I
let
tried to
you.
take them. They were like, it's all full. And I was like, but I'm like, I am also making films. You want them to be silent? And they were like,
they
yes.
said, draw, boy. Go back to your pencils. No.
No words for you,
no
only
words.
Pictures.
Silent.
So I want to know, like, what's your biggest, takeaway learning writing?
Oh, that's a gorgeous question. Biggest takeaway. This isn't something that was taught specifically, but it was like my big takeaway from just observing my peers and myself, and also other people in my group, like trying to pursue it, would be just, it's okay if the first draft is bad, just finish the first draft. And I think that's kind of what has set the more successful graduates apart from, because it was a very small cohort, there was only 15 of us, and I think maybe only 3 or 4 of us are still working in the arts, and that was kind of the delineating factor, was like who would actually be okay with a bad first draft, knowing that eventually it gets better, and just knowing that and trusting your own skill that it will be good one day, and also your bad first draft is probably better than a lot of people's first draft, so just finish it and then you can make it better. But yeah, that fear of failure stopping people from kind of self-sabotaging, I guess, people, was definitely the biggest roadblock that I've observed.
That's really interesting. Yeah, do you take still that to heart as you're working now? Like for example with Midnight Kiss, like how many drafts did you go through for that one?
Oh, there was probably maybe 4 script drafts of the concept's pretty simple, so it didn't go beyond too much of that. But I think in general, I don't feel particularly, I mean, as you can tell by my night, self-conscious of my work.
Do you, when you approach writing for comics versus writing for animation, do you follow the same kind of, not formula, but I guess like structure, or like how does that, do you feel like it's the same thing, or do you approach it differently?
I think it depends on the format. So not format, length. So with comics, I only ever did them on Instagram, so I was kind of beholden to the 10 panels that it would allow at the time, and so it was always like simple concept, joke, and that's the max you could do. But with animations that I'm doing now, the kind of 3-minute ones, usually it's like on the page first, trying to tell a proper story as opposed to just a punchline.
How'd you, for listeners who might be like Sean and I, artists first before writers, how do you describe the difference between writing for a punchline versus writing for a story?
Oh, these are very talented questionnaire.
That's a question.
It's very good. The difference, punchline first is usually how I come up with it, is thinking, and almost I hesitate to give away the source, but this is for free, I guess. As I think of I'm just going to draw a long head, by the way. I think of a movie trope that I really enjoy, or a conventional trope. So say for Midnight Kiss, it is like, it's quick, I need a kiss before midnight, otherwise I'll turn into a creature. And like, all right, what's the like grotty subversion of that I can do really quickly? And then I'll go from there. With long form things, it's usually kind of similar in that I'll think of the logline first. So what's the core story premise? And it's very save the cat in that I'll make sure that is perfect before I move on.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
So you really go hard on the log line?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Until that is like
very cool.
Solid, and then I'll move forward from there. And that just kind of hopefully makes the concept and my passion for it pretty airtight, and makes the scripting process way easier than if I just had a blank page and was like, let's see what follows. It's like there's no world where that's going to be good from me. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And so you think about the log line even before thinking about the characters?
Yeah, usually the protagonist informs the log line and like what setting or scenario they're in. But yeah, usually the concept itself drives everything before anything else.
Mm-hmm. How long do you usually spend on a log line?
Ooh, maybe like what I've done the last time I was like trying to write something new, I wrote down like 5 different log lines. They were all really bad. And then I would narrow it down to 2 that I liked, and then I'd workshop those. And that process probably took maybe a full day.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So you don't have to labor it too much.
And I feel like with log lines, either it comes really easy or it's like shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I don't. What is it about log lines? I don't know. There's something crazy about them.
What's the log line for Bodyhead?
The log line for Bodyhead is basically teenagers with body parts for heads that confuse into a flesh Voltron do so in order to overcome mundane life problems. So it's whereas in like Voltron or in like Power Rangers, they would do it to destroy a villain, a very powerful thing. This is more like, hey, we have to collect all of our faculties in order to pass this test, or hey, we have to like pay our taxes or like whatever. And so the overall the overall story is about them going to college, and it's this being that is very centered around having to become one person, but they're going to a place where classically people go to find their individuality. So the goal is to sort of put them in a place where they all start discovering themselves and then maybe have trouble coming together.
Great. You had to give that a few times. They got that down pat.
A little bit. Yeah, I've had to pitch it. I've had to pitch it a few times, but
yeah.
All in all, it's basically that, like the idea of this crazy anime fusion thing, but it's like it's an order. You know, it's because somebody came up to us in public and asked if we wanted to sign up for a charity, and we are having trouble making eye contact and saying no. Yeah, so, yeah.
I mean, I will invest in Bodyhead.
Nice. Thank you so much.
No one else is in, right? I want 100%. And I won't take less.
What was your journey to getting to Longhead? Like, what inspired the start of that, and what made you stick with it?
Longhead started because I was doing those, like, 10-panel, very quick comics, and I did a comic. It was during COVID times when I was doing these, and I just drew one about a guy who takes a PCR test where they kind of swab the back of your throat, but he like swallows the whole arm and kind of sucks on it. And the character I drew had a very long head, and it is long head, but he didn't have a name then. And I just thought he was funny looking. I was like, oh, this guy would suck on an arm. And then I needed to do another comic. I was like, what if it was the same guy that was sucking on the arm? And what if he was here instead? And then eventually he was in every comic, because I think they all follow the same structure of like, what if someone disrupted this and was actually really awful to be around? And it's like, well, I know a guy who's quite good at that. It is this guy I've drawn before. And it was kind of on accident that he kind of was the repeatable character, but kind of stumbled into that people like kind of liked him a lot. He has like, while he's awful, he has kind of like an innocence to his face, and so people wanted more Longhead, and I gave more Longhead.
So Longhead is the type of cartoon that I would have a lot of trouble writing a logline for. I'm curious, just because it's a short thing, and I'm sorry, V.
Oh, please.
I'd love to hear how you think about Longhead as a logline.
I think about Longhead as a logline as, if anyone's listening, any producers, the Longhead logline is Longhead, comma, a dark buffoon, comma, travels the land and disrupts. Oh no, I've butchered it. Can I just read it out from the thing?
Yeah, no, read it out. That's okay. Yeah,
Longhead.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, this is good. I need to get better at this in case I bump into Martin Scorsese in a lift, and I need to be prepared. You know what? I'll bring up the exact pitch deck.
Clem, if you're listening, cut this to make it look like Millie is so good at reading this log line.
Yeah, Clem, don't cut a thing. People need to know what it's like.
That it's okay to mess up your log line.
Oh yes, Longhead, a dark buffoon, travels the land, leaving a trail of confusion and chaos in his wake, like a horrible Forrest Gump.
That's really funny. The horrible Forrest Gump is so funny. I was gonna say there's something that is so interesting and exciting about absolutely awful characters. I've noticed that people love characters who are like kind of awful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you have like a take on that, if that's anything that you've maybe like studied either in school or that you've noticed in improv or comedy. What's your take on character?
And who's your favorite awful character?
Ooh, I think well, that's a great question, because like I guess like Rick of Rick and Morty fame, he's awful. I'm trying to think of anybody else. BoJack, classic. He sucks.
Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like, what's his name?
Yeah, Larry David.
Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean is so sweet, though. He's such a sweetie.
Well, okay, so I guess we need to define awful. Like he's not. He messes everything up, and that's what I kind of think of as awful. But I don't know if you mean like they're a bad person or not.
No, I think awful should, in the context of this conversation, should mean a huge, very discernible flaw, like a very in-your-face flaw.
Sure.
That, I would say that.
Yeah, so yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, by that metric, I would not call Mr. Beast awful. But Mr. Beast, oh my god, Mr. Bean.
Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast,
we're such big fans of you, Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is one of my favorite awful characters.
Mr. Beast has a huge flaw. It's like
he's too generous.
Impossible. That's very good. No, but Mr. Bean, I would say, while we're on him, I used to, when I would see those as a child, I didn't like them very much because I didn't like the chaos that he would cause. And like watching him, like, you know, have you seen that one? I think it's the movie where he smudges a painting and then to try and fix it, he smudges it more. That is to me the most like distressing thing.
The face that he draws on that painting is so funny, though.
It's so funny.
It's funny because then it happened in real life with the lady in Jesus.
Yes, that is. I think that is the funniest thing that's ever happened in human history.
I agree. 100,000,000% agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, it's like the perfect storm. And was it like this like lovely old woman that did it as well? Like a
because the church doesn't have enough money to fix it. She thought she was really doing a good deed. It's so good.
So funny. The fact that it wasn't malicious.
Yes.
So
I wonder at what point she was like, oh no. I think I might have ruined this. But she's like, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep going. Yeah.
Well, so back to how you think about an awful character, a very flawed character, being a buffoon.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting because this question came up in Austin where Longhead screened the Austin Film Festival, and one of the audience Q&As were like, you've all, like, there was a few shorts as a part of the thing, and the question was, you've all written, like, awful characters, how do you know the line? And because it was the first time that I realized, like, oh, I never thought of Longhead as, like, awful, like, or mean or anything. I just think he's not malicious, but he does cause pain. So yeah, I guess not thinking about them as evil and more just as like a spanner in people's lives.
They're a chaos. They're chaotic.
Yes,
maybe
chaos,
it's chaotic
exactly
neutral.
Yeah.
Awful but not malicious is a great shirt.
Yes. He is. He does ruin people, but he doesn't. That's just like a part of his journey, you know, like. But yeah, when you think of like, what about you guys when like with characters like BoJack or Rick, like why do you think they resonate with people so much?
I feel like, it's so hard to think about for me BoJack or Rick because I remember the first time I watched BoJack.
Mm.
I watched the first episode and I was like, I hate this guy. I don't want to watch this show.
Yeah.
And I dropped it, and it's only after like so many seasons came out, people were like, no, it's really great, you have to watch it, and now it's one of my favorite shows. But it is really hard, and it's a little bit similar for Rick. For me, I watched the first episode and I see the humor, but there's a lot of pain in that episode because poor Morty is like getting like his ass like whooped. And I'm like, no. But I think, I don't know. But I do think there is a certain kind of like, for me, I really do enjoy characters like Mr. Beans, Peter Sellers in the Pink Panther, like really like super dumb, but like well-meaning characters.
Yeah, that's a great definition of like, yeah, it's their idiocy that causes them to mess with people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not a maliciousness. Yeah.
Yeah, because BoJack and Rick, they're like really mean. Like in their I think BoJack he's not redeemed, but he's made to be, we root for him because he sees through Hollywood's bullshit and he calls out the bullshit that he sees that nobody else wants to call out. And I think that's why we get behind him, because we're like, yeah, he sucks, but he's kind of right.
Yes. Yeah, there's like a greater evil in a way. Like, yeah, that's a great take on it.
I feel like there's a lot of people who automatically drift towards very cool characters who are good at what they do.
Yes.
And you took a very deliberate decision to make your character incompetent, and also it's like like they are like, he is a wrench being thrown into everyone else's wheel, also like some sort of walking bad luck charm or something a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Like, was it always that way, or did you like decide to amp it up? Like at first, was it just like, hey, I drew this funny drawing and like this funny thing is happening, or how did it evolve? Like I'm curious about hearing your story about how the way you view this character evolved and how you write this character.
Oh, yeah, I think it started as just like finding a lot of humor in a disruptor coming in and like that agent of chaos. But then the more I've written it, I'm trying to remember the last comic I did, because once we got into the animation of it, I kind of left the comics to rot on my Instagram and didn't really continue them. Moved to bigger, better things. Let me see the last one that I posted. It would have been maybe a year ago. My gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes, a year ago. I did like a storyline where he starts to have a nemesis, and he kind of goes on this he gets shot, and then he wakes up in the Old West, and there's like a girl there who sort of adopts him like she would a dog. And it kind of, I guess the short answer is like, the more you stay with Longhead over the arc of the series, there is like a warmth there that he does have, and like care for people that he does have, but it is deep down, and it is only for very specific people, and it is very quickly often ripped away, but there is a complexity there as well. Oh, and of course sometimes he'll look in the mirror or in the reflection of a lake and he'll see himself with a normal head, and that'll make him quite distressed. So I don't know what that means. Yeah. So maybe
I love that's very salad fingers on the way. That's kind of like absurd. Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah. So there is an inner world, but it's not like, it's rarely seen, but there is hints of it there. And that's how it's evolved a fair bit.
I like that. It's like he's the opposite of that like galaxy brain meme.
Oh, it's like, exactly
like
that.
You'd expect. I think that's what it is. I think that's what one of the interesting things about this character is like you expect like this character to do big brain stuff.
Yeah, because he's got a big head, so you're like, smart.
So it's a subversion of that expectation.
Yes. It's very interesting to just talk about it in any like vaguely intellectual way, because
theoretical.
I'm sure you guys have this as like, I don't know, man. But it is there is thinking there, but it's all sort of subconscious, you know.
Sure.
I agree. I think it's really interesting to kind of like start actually like dissecting the characters and writing, and that's why I was kind of asking about the log lines versus the character writing, because when I've started writing a little bit more, I've personally started realizing that I need to think about my characters first before I can write the log line. So that's why I was like very excited when you said that you wrote the log line first, because but maybe do you feel like doing improv and comedy just has made writing characters a little bit more second nature? Like you don't have to think about it as hard, and it just kind of comes naturally.
Oh, that's a good question. Gosh, you're good. I think it's that thing of like you do something for long enough and doing it like in a way that's fun for you, that eventually it's just the thing you do. So I haven't interrogated that too much, but I think for me, like the characters and the setting and their scenario are all like one and the same. And so if I were to they need to like work together, and so I don't think I've ever thought of a character just like by themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm working on a series now that's about like a poacher essentially, but he's a dummy and we love him, but like a really horrific poacher. And how that came about was just like a big brainstorming doc and thinking about, it'd be funny to put Aslan from Narnia in a cage. I don't know how we get there or what happens there, but just like locking that animal up is funny to me. And then working backwards to be like, what if there was like a horrible poacher who goes around and he just hunts these creatures, and then working from that to like make the character a bit more fleshed out. But like it's usually the concept itself, and I'll find the character that's best suited to it, maybe.
Oh, I get it. Okay, that's awesome. I love the way that you described that. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So something that I was going through like a few years ago was that I had specialized in making short form shorts, which I think is also similar to sketch in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But then there were challenges expanding one of those characters into a broader thing, making them, whether it's making them a little bit deeper, whether it's expanding their story, or maybe it's whether just figuring out, is this character someone that can hold people's attention for that long? So I was curious about if you had encountered any of that when expanding kind of this story into being like past one situation.
Yeah, with like Longhead specifically.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, well, the popping him in different scenarios it's that same method I was talking about before, of thinking of a common trope where the audience has expectations really built in because they've seen it a lot, and then undercutting it. But when it comes to like thinking about the future of Longhead, which is funny to say, but the future of this character, it has been, I definitely see where you're coming from, of tricky to think about, well, what can he sustain beyond a quick joke? And what is the best form for him, if there is one? And I think I'm figuring one out right now, but it is tricky. So I don't really know if I have an answer for that yet. Because like he's born from short form, you know? Yeah.
I like the idea of like the character arc is just that his head gets longer. Like that's the character growth. You're like, oh, I thought that's what you meant. Like he gets longer. No, but it's something that I've thought about a lot, because a lot of the cartoons that I make, the characters like die by the end, and like, but so what it has created is, I was thinking to myself, like, if someone were to ever want to do like, a Lord Spew classic character fan art or something, I'm like, what would they do? Because
good boy.
most of my shorts just end, and the character, you know, and so I don't give people enough time to become attached to some of my characters. And I think V,
that's
you're
fascinating.
Right. That was one of the characters where I had started trying to make something that felt larger than like a one-off thing. It was around that time that I started really thinking about that. But
yeah, how do you go with that, V?
Oh, I was gonna say, I just said Good Boy because it's one of my favorite Lord's Pew characters.
Right.
I think you're
Thank
really
you.
good at writing. You're really good at writing these characters that are like.
Millie thought you were just calling me a good boy.
You're
yeah,
a
I
good
was like,
boy.
oh, what an affectionate relationship these two have. I was moved.
Sean is best boy.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know. Character work is really interesting, but I do think like going, I don't know, from short form to long form is definitely the way I see. Okay. For me, the way I see it is short form helps you get an idea who the character is, and long form gets you an idea what their life is, quote unquote, where it's like, you go from a punchline to a more structured kind of like, okay, how do they mess up their life for themselves, and how do they kind of like learn if any learning happens from it. But
Smart.
but I would say it's like very structure based. I don't know if you've, the class, like where you come from, Millie, in terms of writing. Is it screenwriting specifically? Is it also?
Yeah, it's mostly screenwriting and also sketch comedy. But
Gotcha.
yeah. Lately, it's been almost exclusively sketch comedy of like trying to get these short premises out. But yeah, screenwriting in live action and more recently animation too.
Because so then you've probably tackled all kinds of different formats, right? You must have done like not only 11s but 22s, maybe hour longs, and maybe even features.
Yeah, definitely. I'm still at the start of my young career, so a few things paid. Like most of the paid stuff is short form, like a 10-minute web series or something of the sort, or like Longhead. But yeah, I have like written features and stuff just for little old me. And I love them all, but they're all like different beasts in themselves. They're like, whenever I'm writing a feature, I'm like, oh, I wish I could just do a little joke and leave. but then like I feel like a long form thing feeds the soul in a way that a quick little joke doesn't.
That's really
sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you ever done that work of like going from the sketch to like, let's pretend like a 22 or like an 11?
Yeah, trying to right now with the poacher character. See, like, because it's such a simple concept, but then like trying to flesh out the inner world of someone like that is tricky. Yeah, how do you guys go with going from like just a concept to a longer form piece like that?
I was also kind of like, I had like a ulterior motive when I asked this question.
Oh, please.
No, it's really interesting because that's something that just happened to me and my creative partner, Sam. We are working, we did a couple of smalls for Adult Swim.
Hell
called
yeah.
Hyman Queen. It was a ton of fun. We just turned in our 3 new scripts. They really liked them. But
congrats.
They said, would you be interested in turning these 3 times 3 minutes into a single 11? And it's kind of like,
how does that work?
I know, exactly. So I was like, oh, question mark, because it's
because they are different they're different stories. It would be trying to figure out how to Frankenstein it, right?
Yeah. So it's either and so that's the thing. It's like either we Frankenstein it and it's like a mini anthology, or it's a page 1 rewrite. So it's kind of like,
that's so interesting. What a fun ask! Wow. Yeah, because was that their request to Frankenstein, or is it like up to you?
Up to us. So it was very interesting. I thought it was a very interesting question, and I was like, we could just add a color card. So it's like, I don't know, 1 day later.
Yeah.
Like,
then also this happened.
Varied life. Yeah. Something else they get up to. Don't overthink it. That's kind of fun, actually, to be like, yeah, they do other stuff. It's not just this.
It's I don't know. This is kind of funny to like you run into the weirdest stuff, like when you work in this biz, I guess, because it's like, I don't know, I don't think like I would ever have like a class where like someone would be like, all right, well, here's a curveball.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll play the producer I've just given you the most insane curveball. Appease me. That is very interesting. Yeah, well, I can't wait to see. Please keep me in the loop with how you tackle that, because that's fun. Yeah. But also, like, so many decisions have to be made then.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like that's sort of the nature of the, whatever this pitching game. There's these like obstacle courses that you must run through, and you're constantly trying to figure out how to satisfy yourself and your own integrity without feeling like you sold your soul or compromised everything, with making your collaborator, the people that are funding you, feel listened to and like you're taking them serious. And a similar thing, it's not exactly the same, but a similar thing happened with a project that I'm developing, where it's gone from sort of like a Simpsons format to, say, like the show Recess, where it's in school. It's contained just within the school life, and while we see the parents, sometimes it's mostly just in a school, and we're sort of trying to take some of the same premises, but reverse engineering it, like kind of dismantling them and taking what parts we can salvage and reworking them into a new thing without it feeling like this doesn't even make sense anymore. So
that like process of taking notes and then the form changing, it's so like, by the end, will this Frankenstein even be like, does it still have that unified, clear vision that original concept had? Or is there so many extra body parts on and taken away that it's now just like a shell of what it was? I've definitely had that with stuff in the past.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Or
Yeah. Well, this was an interesting one. The straight out of uni, my university kind of final year project, you got to write a feature. It was 3 half hours or a feature. So I picked a feature I think I wanted like a solid thing at the end, just to pop on my shelf. And I did a live action family feature about it was National Treasure, basically. Because I love that movie. But about a girl, we have an outlaw, a famous Australian outlaw called Ned Kelly. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like he's like a Robin Hood sort of character in the 1800s, I believe, maybe a bit earlier, I can't remember. And we have the armor on display in our big state library, and it's about a girl who steals the armor because there's a map on the back that leads to all of his loot. It's National Treasure, basically, and it's like a family film. She learns to connect with her mother along the way, blah blah blah. So very pure of heart adventure family Goonies sort of a thing. But yeah, eventually we were getting some notes from a body here, and then it became a TV show, and it's like, all right, how do you do a serialized kids TV show with that format? Okay, it's like a treasure of the week is what they're finding. Okay, but we need a larger overall storyline here. Okay, so what if there's like, there used to be this history of this town, and somebody's trying to sell the town because they know there's gold underneath, because it's an old gold mining town, and eventually it was adding so many characters. We needed the backstory of that to be good, that what was of such a simple story about like a romp with a family, all of a sudden became so convoluted and a shell of what it had been in the past. And when we eventually like submitted it for funding, it got a no, which is like so fair. And I watched it and I was like, oh yeah, it's like, it's not really anything anymore. it's like, no. And the reason we made it a TV show was because features are so hard to get made, especially in Australia, that we're like, this will be better. And it was not better. It was far worse. But yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about Australia and the funding that's happening there. I do feel like on the internet, and especially American internet, I see a lot of people being excited about Australia producing indie animation, since there's Glitch, that's an Australian studio, and they benefit from grants, I believe.
Yes.
And there was this short little series, animated series, Something Days. But I kind of wanted to know what your take on Australian like funding and animation is. Like, do you have thoughts, ideas? an assessment of the landscape?
I think I'm not 100% across it, I'll be honest, but from what I can observe / know within is that there are opportunities. Obviously, Michael Cusack's shows are massive, and Smiling Friends and all of that. He's runs out of Melbourne, his own studio, Cusack's Creatures and Princess Bento here, and they've got like something like 3 or so shows with him that are just constantly employing every animator in Melbourne all the time forever, and so everyone owes him a big thank you. And there's other production companies as well making good stuff. But I would say I can't speak specifically to animation because I'm so new to it. But in terms of the Australian landscape in general, I don't know how much you guys know about it, but we are very incredibly beholden, for the most part, to government funding, which is like an amazing program where, you know, we want stuff made here, we want to employ people here, and so the government will chip in for projects, but it's also a highly competitive scheme where people are submitting their stuff all the time. They're pretty extensive applications. You need a path to audience, you need da-da-da-da. And so the amount of limited opportunities means that there's not a lot of risk taking in general, especially the more money that you're asking. So in the online space, I've done like a live action web series recently, and they also funded Longhead. They will take some really cool risks where you're like, can't believe that got government funding, what the hell? But then as soon as you move up the chain a little bit, then they take no risks at all. It's very there's like kind of a joke that if you want to get government funding, you have to set it in the outback with a dog, and they'll be like, hell yeah, like, we'll make this family feature. But if you don't have that, yeah, we just make those movies all the time, and so that's my sort of opinion on.
No, that's it. I like that you bring that up, because coming from France, and I like French funding for animation and culture in general. I mean, obviously we don't have the Outbacks in France, but but if you make it extremely French in like its themes, and or like, you know, if it's like, you know, like, then you're gonna have a higher chance. So that's like
that's exactly the same. I didn't know it was the case in France as well. That's crazy.
I wonder, and I can talk about this a little bit. I can do a parallel with France, because so the government funding in France is called CNC. So it's like, if anybody listening right now, which is any French animation, and sees CNC on a piece of media, it means they got government funding. And there's different steps to it. You can apply to a first step to help get a Bible made, and they will pay you $5,000 if you get the help. And the way that it works is that you submit an idea, a deck, and then a bunch of people will review it, and if they like it, they give you $5,000, and then a month or 2 later, you have to submit something back, and then they can be like, okay, you did the work that you said you would do. And there's like different steps where you can get maybe like $10,000, and then maybe it's like one that's like $25,000, and it's for different steps of the production. Have you gone through any of these grant processes? Do you feel comfortable talking about the money and like what it entails?
Because that's what it was for Longhead, right? You applied to. That's awesome.
Yeah, which is so funny that it's government funded, but knowing what it is. Yeah. So I've been through those processes so many times. I maybe have applied 8 to 10 times, been successful 3 to 4. Maybe.
That's a good ratio.
Yeah, it's a good ratio. Yeah. So there is an art to them, and like once you learn how to do it, it's your responsibility to teach others how to do it, because there's so many little ways and so many forms that they're after that it's like, it's crazy. But I won't do Longhead as the example, because we only went for production funding for that, not development funding. But there was the live action web series that I did, which got development funding and then a year later production funding. And so we had a production company on board for that, and they filled out all of the budgety business. But essentially what they're really big on, at least in Australia, is a path to audience. And they're like, they don't want to give you something if they don't think anyone will see it, which is fair enough, I guess. So they try to figure out how to... So if you have a following, that's fantastic, but then also that's kind of shitty of like, well, does that mean only people with followings get money? And so people are trying to build up their online brand. But essentially, we got, trying to remember the amount, maybe about 15,000 Australian to write the scripts for a web series that was 5 by 10 minutes. And then eventually that went for production funding, and I think the total amount there was about 200,000, give or take. I could be making stuff up there. And that was to shoot, it was like a 12-day shoot, which is pretty amazing that the government will do that. Are there, in the US, are there any government programs like that, or not really, because you don't need it?
It's a lot more rare. I mean, there are, but for the most part, when I see them, in general, they seem to be, it's more inclined to be for either cultural films or educational, or like maybe films that are in partnership with a certain nonprofit or something like that. But it seems like it's a little bit of a different system.
Yeah, in Australia, it's like you don't make a film without it. You just can't, basically. Unless you go like super indie, you fund it yourself, and it's like filmed on a DSLR or something. Yeah, you need that funding.
So are you, like, is there a situation where there are production companies that you can pitch to, and then you'll pitch with that production company to the government? Or is it always like we pitch to the government and then we find the production company to make it? Like, because we have all these studio systems here that are like, those are the people who you pitch to.
I think you can pitch particularly for development funding without a production company, but they probably won't give you the money if you're going for production without the company. But I will say there was a time, kind of, 2020, 2021, and before, when I graduated from uni, I was writing a lot of scripts, trying to get my stuff out there, and I was like doing the cold email, trying to pitch people things, and it just doesn't work here. It's not really a thing in the slightest. I don't know what the setup is in the US.
I would say similar. Yeah.
You get no response whatsoever. We do have a representation system here, but it's pretty small. But kind of the only way I've got work is, and maybe it's the same for you guys, is just like you meet somebody, you get one job, you get another job, and then eventually someone in the gatekeepers community decides that you're worthy and you can actually live off it. Yeah. But they're really closed off until you get that first job, until you get an angel like helping you out.
Yeah, that's so real.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it was, I remember being like really disheartened of like, well, how am I meant to know anyone if I don't know anyone? It's just,
that's a real question. And everybody, and that's a question that we get a lot too from our listeners or just in general. And I would say, so how did you find your angel?
The angel was found by, I've had a few angels. I've been very lucky. And you do need a few.
This is a Christian
angels.
Podcast now, by the way.
No, I'm joking. I mean this in the truest sense of the word. I've been saved. And it was by putting my work online and performing at comedy festivals, which is like the lame answer of like, you've got a phone, you've got a camera. But it's like, I can't imagine a world. I don't know how you could possibly get discovered if you're not making stuff and putting it online at this stage.
Yeah.
That's the advice. That's the advice I always hear. That's true.
Yeah, I think it's like, I see why there'd be pushback on like, it's unpaid labor, blah, 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 but hey, you gotta do it. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, because it's this thing where it's like, I think because the kind of work that we do is, okay, this thought isn't really put together very well, so bear with me. But we work in a field that is tied to culture, and culture can shape worldview and opinion. So there's a lot of power that can be, I mean, I'm not saying that it comes with it, but it can be associated with it. So there's a lot of people who are interested in doing this. And on top of that, it's fun. So you get two really exciting things about it. So the competition is extremely high. Yeah. So if you don't really put yourself out there, I don't think, and it's unfortunate, but it's just kind of that's the realities behind trying to break into a culture, like a job that has a power in culture.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I was recently like lamenting to a friend because I did my first ever like proper pitch meeting to a distributor like a month ago, and I was so scared for it. And the production company that's working alongside me like did like a whole like coaching session with me on like, this is what will happen, this is what you have to say, like a full routine. And I was so nervous for it, and I was like, oh gosh, yeah, it was crazy, but it went well. But the stress of it was like pretty intense, and I was lamenting to a friend afterwards of like, man, I signed up to be a writer. How come I have to like be a marketer as well? Like, how come I have to selling yourself as part of this thing? And I'm like, I'm fine chatting to people. Yeah.
Can you walk us through just a little bit of what like a meeting like that is like?
Oh, for sure. I'm not sure. Again, I'm so sorry if this isn't crossover across the sea, but the version that I had was, so we have a project. It's a animated feature. It's signed on with a production company, and we were pitching it to a distributor. And the reason we were pitching it to the distributor was we want to get government funding for me to do another draft on it and punch up the script, and then eventually we'll take that out to bigger buyers. But the distributor we need an expression of interest from them and their sign-on before we go to the government body. Mm-hmm. But I imagine there's versions of this in the States. All that to say is that essentially what was coached to me, like, you're going to... actually, I'll bring up my notes of the dot points I needed to hit.
Ooh, very cool.
Yeah, we don't talk about this part of the process very much, and I think it's really interesting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Like the kinds of things that you'll have to say and the kinds of ways that you have to think to land something like this.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up the lamenting being a marketer, because I have had that conversation so many times. I'm like, I'm not a salesman, god damn it. You know, like, I didn't go to school for this.
Exactly. And I feel lucky in that I've done improv. I can be in front of a crowd, and like, I just feel bad for like more introverted writers and artists who it's like you have to do it, but it's so unfortunate of like, if it's not your skill set, it's like a thing you need to get. That's like maybe just some general advice for anyone listening is do improv, because I was a real wallflower before that, and it just gave me a lot of confidence in talking to people.
And also, you don't have to say any like NDA breaking whatever.
Yeah. Oh no, I won't.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious about like the types of things that you have to either practice or your kind of like your strategy for like convincing somebody like that.
Well, the reason I'm bringing up my notes is that the production company were incredibly specific about the beats to hit and in what order. And again, I don't know if they were being overzealous or the distributors were being extra picky, or if I was crazy and they needed to rein me in. I have no clue what the reason was for it being so restrictive.
Well, they know you do improv, so you're like, oh, my hand is gone.
Exactly.
Oh, no. You know? And they're like...
I'm completely obnoxious. They're like, give her a script. So introduce herself, segue into the idea, and give a personal anecdote of why this idea is important to you and the origin story. Now, in the prep meeting, they gave me a test question of this. They're like, oh, let's just practice now. Millie, how'd you come up with this story? My answer was not good enough. They literally said, that's your homework to figure out a better story. Because the honest answer was that I just thought it was cool and that I like this movie, and I was thinking something sort of like that. Like, that is it. And they said that is not the answer that you will give tomorrow. The answer you give tomorrow has to be personal.
I was at my grandfather's deathbed, and
joke.
I held his dying hand.
You're joking, but it's funny because I have a writer friend. We talk about this stuff, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I just like medieval stories.
Yes.
And she's like, you just got to make it personal. And then I was just like, God damn, like, I don't know. I grew up, there was some ruins in the forest close to where I lived, I guess. And she's like, she's like, do this, say this thing. Yes. And I'm like, oh, I never really thought about that. But it's funny how you're like, crafting the story after the fact.
Yeah, it feels pretty manufactured and...
Yeah, right?
I have a similar one. I had to convince... I was doing a pitch and it was a show about people who were in a treatment center for unusual fetishes. And so the person that I pitched to, I ran into a little bit of a roadblock where he was like, okay, so I've been to a lot of AA meetings, and I, am a struggling addict. I'm curious, at what point of view are you coming from? Like, have you been to one of these? And I was like, fuck, no. And what I ended up coming to was like, it was from the point of view of someone at one of these places who at first was judgmental and begins to learn the lovable things about these people. And it was because, like, I used to be straight edge growing up, and I didn't drink and I didn't smoke. And I think throughout my 20s and my early teens, I was insufferable. I judged people who drank. I hated parties. I talked shit. Like, I was like, I don't want to be around these people. And I had to grow to a place of like understanding people. And so that was sort of I'm like, that's how I connect it to me, because sometimes they also want reassurance that it's not something that's coming from a mean-spirited place, or is it a place from learning or whatever. I'm curious what your solution was for you.
It's interesting. I mean, in both of your examples, there is a deeper thing there. You just got to like really think about it. And so what I did was like, I took less so the story, because the story is like a very fantastical like adventure that no one in real life has gone on. But I took the archetype of the main character, which is an older woman, and I thought about the people in my life that are like that, or people that I've met who are like that, and accessing it from that. So I'm drawn to this type of archetype because of this time I worked here. There were all these women, and this is what I found really endearing about them, but also this is something I think very interesting about them, and then segueing into the story. But a lot of like soul searching of like, oh, I guess the character I really like, okay, where was that idea from? And it was like, on like pretty, a lot of brainstorming, and it's not, you're not telling a lie, but like, it's like your guys, it's not a lie where it's come from, but it is like, you're doing it after the fact.
You're reverse engineering it, but it's that same thing that you were talking about, like when we were dissecting like what Longhead is.
Yes.
Like but instead of being about the character, it's about the reason why you made the thing, or why you're making the thing, why that interests you.
Exactly.
I also realized, and it's funny, and then we can keep going through some of the points in your doc unless you had gone through all of them, but I
got a few more.
Like the points that you've brought up so far, extremely similar to the way people pitch here in the US as well.
Right.
Yeah,
that's good to know. That's that I've had some practice then.
Transferable skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Watch me take New York by storm.
Also, is this much different than how you had to pitch Longhead?
Incredibly different. Yeah, Longhead only was just the EP reaching out to me, saying, "Do you have any ideas?" Sure. We had a lunch, and he's like, all right, let's do it. Then he put together the application for Screen Oz. And in the Screen Australia application, that you do have to write why it is benefiting Australian culture, and you have to really reverse engineer some stuff there.
Writing why Longhead is benefiting Australian culture is that's so funny.
It's like it's a true meme at this point of like showcasing our beautiful landscape, like things like that. Or there's a lot of
your background,
the creatives, and like they should be given a shot. But and I understand where they're coming from. They want to make net good things, but it is like reverse engineering at the finest extent.
Did you have to include any like landscapes or locations or backgrounds that were specifically like, you could tell where this is in Australia?
There is one, the Longhead that came out recently. It's at a theme park in Melbourne.
There we go. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, and I probably never would have known that if you didn't.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So less so for Longhead, but for the feature we're going for, it's set in the outback. Let's just say that. like all good features are. I'll go through the other stuff on the points just to make sure that these listeners can get the good stuff. So they said, introduce yourself, where the idea came from, that personal thing, and then give a broad strokes, really condensed version, like retell the story basically in 5 to 6 sentences. And this really freaked me out, because I asked the producers who were there with me, I was like, won't it sound like I'm a kid explaining a dream, and it's like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then like, or like, is that not going to be horrendous for anyone to listen to? And they're like, and then the guy's like, well, that's where your storytelling skills come into play. I was like, oh god.
Dude, for real. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And so it's a lot of like set up the runway is what they said, and then give the key points for the rest of the feature, and then hit that emotional resolution, really make it land. And I was like, oh my god, okay. So a lot of practicing the night before, and then why what audience you think it is, and why, and what kind of stuff they enjoy. And yeah, I guess also just you're pitching yourself as well. And so like when you have your small talk pleasantries up top, be sure to mention the cool stuff you're up to, so you can really razzle dazzle people. I don't know. Do you get told to razzle dazzle? Yeah.
I mean, I haven't been taught to do it, but I've been told to do it.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh god.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's like, okay, this is the brag at him section.
Yeah,
all right,
exactly.
go off.
Oh,
yeah.
No.
It's so hard, and especially as artists, you're like, you're always self-deprecating, and
yes.
I mean, there's a reason why we're artists.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to write a bio about myself. I'm always I sound so cringy.
I know, but you have to do it. It's that thing you need to know to sell yourself, and it's
yeah. Can you give us like what you've landed on like now? Like how do you kind of pitch yourself? Can you brag at us?
I'm not gonna do that.
Millie, come on. No, I'm joking. You don't have to.
What I'll say is like, for example, like with Longhead coming out, I've had a few meetings off the back of that. And usually the brag is just like, people ask like, so what you been up to lately? And it will just be honestly like the going to Austin Film Festival, the working on the game that I'm working on as well. And then, also I'm doing, and then this other project, which I won't say in the podcast for NDA reasons. But so yeah, saying those things and that'll usually be enough. Is that how much you guys tend to say?
Honestly, the reason why I'm asking you is because I still don't know how to do this correctly. I lead with the fact that I'm French and I move back and forth. Like my story French. Usually is like,
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm French. I grew up in middle school and high school, both in France and in the US, and so I lead with like the cultural thing of like, I feel like I'm never French enough. When I'm in France, I'm the American. When I'm in America, I'm the French person. So there's like something that's interesting in terms of like the push and pull and not really like belonging anywhere. And always like for me, there's a strong need to fit in and kind of bend over backwards to be one of it. This is something really silly about myself, but for me, when somebody like once in an Uber driver was like, "Oh, you sound like you're from Texas," and in a weird kind of way, I was extremely proud. I was like the most American of Americans, the Texans,
the barbecue guys. Yeah,
thank you, sir.
My goodness. Well, no, when we first were talking, I didn't clock French straight away. I thought Minnesota.
That's so funny. Like for me, if anyone's like, "Well, you're from this very American states," like if for me this is weirdly specific, but if somebody thinks that I'm from the Midwest or the South, I'm like, I'm a real American.
That's beautiful. I think it was
you did it.
I only have the accent references from media, and so Fargo was what I was pulling from.
Oh,
dude,
that's funny.
Like that's sort of
which is it's a weird thing for me to feel, because I know there's tensions between any other countries, like France and America are not always the best friends. I mean,
what do you mean?
I've experienced it firsthand. So there's something that's also kind of weird about like, where you belong there. So that's kind of the kind of story I try.
There was a time where we decided to rename French fries to Freedom Fries instead of.
I know and I got French called fries. Freedom Fries because I was in middle school at the time.
You got called Freedom Fries? That's crazy.
But it's because it's just kids will be kids and they'll do that.
Yeah.
And there's things where it's like, like French people are known to be, what's the word, like mean, I guess. So
Yeah.
like one time I was tabling and I was, I don't know, being self-deprecating about my accent, whatever. And the guy was like, well, you're really nice for a French person. You're one of the good ones. And inside of myself, I was kind of dying, but I was like, yay, well, I can buy my comic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never, personally, maybe it's being in Australia, I've not heard French people to be, oh, you know what? No, I take that back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because there's a lot of us in Australia now with and we're kind of awful, aren't we?
No, the only experience I've had is when I've been in Paris. But I was an obnoxious tourist who deserved to be talking down to.
True.
So I was asking for it.
I think that, to tell you the truth, I think a lot of that stereotype about French people comes from I've heard that there's a cultural difference with customer service. A little 100%. Bit.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people react to, where American customer service is very like I will do anything to be very nice and polite, and I need this job and I love this job and I'm taught to like do anything for the company. And I feel like a lot of French jobs are like you're like, this is just a fucking job. Like I'm not gonna like
yeah.
But I don't know. That's what I've heard. Is that off base?
I think that's pretty true. I mean, it's hard, and I could talk about this for hours, so I'm going to try to make it the TLDR.
Oh, no, I could listen for hours. It's
I know,
so interesting.
But that's not what the podcast is about, Millie. It's about you.
Let's change it.
Let's change it. But long story short, I do think French culture it can be a bit brash, and it's also not afraid of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the sparks go flying, is that like I would say that's the main thing. It's like it's a bit more confrontational culture, and it's a little bit more I'll just keep it to that. Now I want to know, Sean, if you have a special way of pitching yourself. Like
special way of pitching myself
when you're in these meetings,
I feel like the way that I normally pitch myself is that because I come from the world of making my own shorts all by myself, I have a love for all parts of the process, and I've become very well-rounded, and I've worked a lot of different jobs. And also because of that, making my own things outside of work is ingrained in me, and it's always been, I've always like been more driven to do that than I think some other people. So other than like bragging about, I don't know, like a show I was on or something like that, it's usually just like talking about my grind set, talking about my hustle and my,
yeah.
You
don't bring in your punk or straight edge side to it. I think that's cool.
It depends on the project. Like if I am pitching something musical, sometimes I will bring in a musical pitch. Like sometimes I will make a song. Like I've pitched shows where I bring in a song to the pitch, and then I talk about like being like making music and stuff as well. Like it usually depends on what the pitch is, as far as like what I'll bring into it. But I mean, I would say that like from the outside, like for both of you, I think some unique identifying features are that you dabble in a lot of different things, and there aren't going to be very many people that have all of those things. Like Millie, I feel like the idea that you come from writing and then improv, and you after that got into art and comics and drawing and animation, like that's a weird thing. Like that most people don't have all of those things scooped up into one, and like you are like a perfect setup for like the new like home movies or something, where it's like a very improv based show. And V, I feel like you have there's a lot of dynamic stuff where I know because of your show experience that you're able to storyboard and direct in an action format, but you also write like comedy comics, and you have worked on comedy shows, and so there's this like versatility to what you're able to do, and the different types of jobs that you're able to do, that is going to give you a unique flavor also. So yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of about like talking about the different like it's like the Powerpuff Girl ingredients, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're like shouting out the things that make you that other people don't have a little, even if it's not bragging about your last big accolades or something.
Yeah, that's a great, as you were saying your own, I was just like, oh, that's such a great angle to be like, because I guess you're living in your own life, so you don't know how special it is or like how unique it is. You just assume everyone's like you, but
that's so true. That's so real. I man, it's so hard to be able to access like oneself in a way that is remotely not accurate, but like, you know, objective. Yes, that's the word. Exactly. Thank you.
I mean, I think if you're ever trying to brainstorm that, ask someone who you know, like either looks up to you or admires you. Like ask someone who like thinks highly of you to describe you, and then like try to.
That's so hard to do though. Like
going up to someone, can you tell me what you like about me?
Yeah, like. I really want to buy you a coffee.
I just did it for you.
Yeah, but we didn't ask you to do it.
You know what I mean?
It was just a beautiful thing that happened.
We just kind of manipulated Sean into telling us how great.
Okay, so you're saying it's hard to ask, not hard for the person to be put on the spot.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah. I just don't know how you transition to that conversation. Like, what about me? Like,
I mean, all you have to say is, "Hey, I have to write a bio about me, and I don't know what sets me apart from other people. Can you describe?"
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, someone you trust. That's cute.
Yeah, we were just overthinking it, I guess.
I think you're right. We get switched up and I say, growing up in France, this and this and this.
So funny. Oh my god.
I love this drawing, by the way.
This is really
all the long heads
spiraled.
are really funny.
You guys are gifted at drawing long heads.
It's like that scene in like The Matrix where he has to battle all the Agent Smiths or whatever. And,
well, I got jealous of your ensemble. That's what happened there. I was like, well, I want an ensemble, but I only have
want
one
a bunch of guys. Well, you got to make long head, wide head, deep head.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Concave head.
Eventually, it's just body head, unfortunately.
Oh,
I think the Venn diagrams will meet one day in an unavoidable way.
I do think it's really funny that, like, there's a lot of long heads in one picture, and I wonder if you ever were to write an episode for, like, X or Y reason. Like, let's pretend he just kind of stumbles into, like, a mad scientist's lab, and there's there's, like, a million of him. How would you react?
Would I react or he react?
He. First he and then you.
Me, I would be like, how am I in a 2D space? That has a lot of questions. He would react, well, my like sicko brain says that he'd like kiss all of them. But
you sicko.
Like anyone would with their clone. How would he react?
Would I kiss my clone? Wait,
hold on. I would not kiss
You're
my
assuming everyone would kiss their clone.
That's so funny.
You wouldn't think about
Actually, you know what though? I think I would hug myself.
Oh.
I've been told that I give good hugs, and I can never hug myself, so I don't know.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's like Disney. Do you know
so
the rule at Disneyland that the mascot can't be the first to pull away from the hug? The kid has to be.
Whoa, yeah. I did not know that.
So, because you don't know how much that kid needs that hug. But for you would have the Disney rule, but then you'd just be hugging forever.
Dude, that's so funny. There's this thing called, what was it called? It's called Rule 1 in the game Rocket League, that car soccer game, where if you crash into one another and you're stuck and the two of you are pressing down the gas and you're just driving into each other and you're stuck, you're not allowed to separate, and your teammates have to keep playing, and you have to stay like that all game if that's what happens. And it kind of feels like that.
Is that the rule in like the competitive space? What is that?
I don't know how it's handled in a competitive game. I'm assuming that they break that. I'm assuming actually that they never get into that situation. That's like their like number one coaching. Like never get into the situation where you're bumped up against the guy.
That's beautiful. What would you do with your clone, V? Would you say hello?
I think I would say hello.
That's nice.
I honestly, I don't know. I think it would be really awkward.
Yeah.
I feel like you would just try to have both of you work on the thing so that you can get a thing done.
Oh, that's nice. An extra you.
There's not enough time in the day, right?
That's right. But if my clone is exactly like me, we would be too competitive, and we would not be like, we would both.
Isn't that the one person who you can trust though?
I don't. No, you can trust yourself.
You can only kiss yourself. That's it.
But you can't trust yourself not to fall in love.
Oh my gosh, the one rule about having a clone.
Don't fall in love with your clone.
That's so funny. Oh my god.
Well, not to...
That's so funny. Okay, back to the podcast.
No. Well,
sorry, guys.
I wanna really get into like from like the journey of making Head and what it was like going from it being a comic to realizing it should be something more, to there being a, right now there's a web series out, and is all of it out, or is there more coming?
More coming. So we just dropped episode 3 last night, and there'll be episode 4 coming out tomorrow.
Amazing.
And so there's 6 episodes all up. But how it came to be is, so I got that cold email from the EP who saw my comics online, and essentially the crazy thing is he was like, "Who's your dream cast?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't." It'd be like so stupid and crazy, and it's never going to happen, and it's probably like a really stupid, crazy idea. But Sam Campbell, and if you don't know Sam Campbell, he's an Australian comedian who has since moved to the UK. He's been on UK Taskmaster. He's blowing up there, but he's in the Australian comedy community known as like a genius, basically. It's like I would love this guy. He's my idol. I love him so much. And then Dan, the EP, was just like, okay, sure, and because he knows him, and because everyone knows each other in this godforsaken country, and he was just like, yeah, we can make that happen. And then he said, Sam is in town for a week, and then he flies back to London, so can you fly up to Sydney tomorrow to record the voice lines?
What?
Whoa.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So were you
Hollywood.
geeking?
I was geeking out. I was going crazy. And also, because of that turnaround, I didn't have time to write new scripts, and so the scripts just had to be what the comics were. The night before, I extended them out, but it was in a nice way. I didn't really have time to overthink what the animation version of Longhead is. It's like, well, what already exists is all that it can be if we're going to have Sam, which was the priority. And so flew up to Sydney. Something also that Dan, the EP, was so good at is I guess from years, not too many, but enough time in the industry, thought that I wouldn't be allowed to direct it, or that that Dan, the more experienced person, would default to the director. And so the night before, I was like, hey, so just if I have any ideas for alts or anything like that, do you mind if I speak up and pop those in? He's like, Millie, you're directing it. I was like, what? It's so directing the voice actors and your idols is crazy. But just that Dan was willing to let a younger, more emerging creator take a role like that.
Man.
And didn't even question it, and just had the trust in me that I probably didn't even have in myself, was such a testament to him and what a great guy he is, especially as a younger woman as well. It's it meant a lot that he was willing to just say, yeah, you do it, you're great.
So any takeaways from that first recording session? Is there anything that you would change that you did, or any advice that you would give?
I guess this is not to pat myself on the back, but I was so nervous for it that, you guys have ever been so nervous for something that you kind of hope it gets cancelled?
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's that thing where you're like, oh, well,
if this,
yeah, well, maybe it's better to, it doesn't happen and then it can't be bad and then it's all good.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And it's like, I would have been devastated if it got cancelled out of nowhere, but I was so nervous, I'd be like, there would be a bit of relief. And I was so nervous that I would stuff it up. But once I got in there, because I'd been doing improv for like almost 10 years and I'd been teaching it at that point and I'd done sketch and I took to it pretty easily and felt really confident in like my requests and what I found funny and all of that stuff. So I guess my main takeaway, again, especially as like a younger woman in the space, is I think we often think we can't do something, whereas like a lot of dudes will think that they are experts without ever doing it. And so, but I kind of realized like, oh no, not only can I do it, I've done it before, just in a slightly different version. And just backing myself a little bit more the night before so I could get some sleep would have been what I changed. Yeah, no, and I mean, hindsight's 2020. Maybe would have been nice to have a bit more time in the lead up just to get the scripts punched up, but overall I was really proud of myself and the team, and just thought I should have maybe backed myself a little bit more. Awesome. Which I do now, but yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
I love these long heads so much.
That's awesome that you had a positive experience doing it, and it sounds like you kind of like surprised yourself, and that's always a good feeling.
Oh, yeah, it's so rare to sort of like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I was really over the moon. Just honestly not to embarrass myself, and I didn't leave the session being like, oh, like, what are these people going to think of me or anything like that. It was like, oh no, I think it was a really fun time. We got what we needed, and I think these will be really cool. Which the night before, if you'd told me I'd leave thinking that, I wouldn't have believed you because I was so nervous.
By the way, I'm curious if I don't even know if this is a question you can answer, but I know that obviously there's always a lot of talk of like interesting Australian slang for different things that Americans have never heard of. I'm curious if there's any film or animation specific.
Oh, maybe let me think on that. I can't think of any
we'll
off the
come
top
back
of
to
my
it.
head.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, animation specific. No, I'm not too sure.
So you recorded, and then so this is like before storyboarding even happens, right? Like
this is before we even got funding. Dan bankrolled the recording.
Whoa,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, the trust that he has had in this project and me is like crazy, and we barely knew each other, and now we're very good friends. And he came with me to Austin and all of that, but. This was just a strange man that I'd never met before, who was just like having so much faith in me, which is why I was so nervous for the release of Longhead. I was like, I just don't want to let this guy down who's really like supported me. But so yes, got the recordings done, and then again he bankrolled a proof of concept that I think eventually he got paid back for by Screen Australia, like it was part of the budget. But he bankrolled a 3-minute proof of concept, which kind of ended up being one of the episodes. And then with that, we went to Screen Australia for full production funding. They did the storyboards, which were essentially the comics. All the character designs were from the comics. Had to draw a few more props, but got the animators on board, did the storyboards. Then we had a sound team that came in and added a score and sound effects and all that. And yeah, the whole process, counting everything, probably took about 2 years on and off because it was shelved for just a little bit of time as well. Yeah.
That's very cool. I'm going to start peppering in some questions from our listeners because we have a lot.
Oh, do we?
People like you. What would you recommend to do to get people like you like that?
Oh, no self-respect. Just be a complete doormat. No. I think have very supportive friends who support everything you do.
That's awesome.
Be very lucky is the answer.
No self-respect. So funny. Our patron It's Bird asked, do you have any tips on writing jokes for comics?
Yes, keep it simple. I'm sorry I keep repeating this, but my favorite thing in the world is like film and genre and all of that. So that's my well of ideas where it comes from. What's a trope that I really like, and what's a funny thing that you can do to undercut it.
Yeah, that's great. And is there a type of gag slash humor that you prefer? Well, I guess you kind of
Naughty.
bird. Naughty.
Naughty jokes.
Naughty.
I don't know why it is so funny to do these, just because it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe because I don't know if, okay, this is going to be a wild thing to say, but I don't know. I feel like as women doing like some kind of like a sex joke or whatever is just so funny because it's like
so good.
because it's like, I don't know, we've been told like our entire lives how we're supposed to feel about it.
Yes, yeah. It gets a real joy from doing the cheeky thing. You're like, oh my god. I still get that sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is a silly one.
From YouTube at Hudson B PD3UD. What is better in your opinion, warm or cold colors?
Ooh, I like a warm color. That's my answer. What about you guys?
Yeah, I always pick warm colors. I just think
I'm
it's just
probably a cool colors guy.
Looking at this drawing, I think we can see where our preferences lie with that beautiful purple you've got there.
Mm-hmm.
On the guy, or blue.
Well, yeah, I mean, as somebody who I kind of have some origins in metal illustration, metal covers, and stuff like that. I definitely lean a little bit more darker in general with everything, with writing, with tone, all that stuff. But I think over the last couple years, I've drifted into more sincerity and like positivity, but it wasn't always that way.
Yeah, that's very cute though. I love that for you.
It was so dark.
I think sincerity is really funny. I think being really like sincere, like over the top romance and positivity can be very funny, and it's very easy to be very mean, and it's
I do also think that this is in the zeitgeist. I think I forget what I was listening to or what it was, but someone was talking about how being mean was more of like an older generation, like pointing at somebody and laughing kind of type of humor is more of like an older generation type of humor.
Oh, yeah.
And that our like millennials were very much kind of like self-deprecating and like, haha, look at how pathetic I am or whatever. And now it's just more like kind of like sincere.
Yeah.
The kind of humor.
Should we not make our characters point at each other, you think?
Let's change it.
No.
Well, they're not laughing.
No, this is a shout out to the oldies. This is a shout out to those that came before us.
Mm-hmm.
From Instagram, Chernobyl asks Chernobyl.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. I went to the improv conspiracy last Friday. Why weren't you there?
Well, that's the theatre where I will often perform, and I had a show scheduled with my team King George last Friday, but unfortunately, I blame the flight from Austin. My back was really fucked, and so have you ever? And maybe it's also hunching over an iPad all my life, but my back just completely seized up that day, and I was on the floor, and so I was not fit to be on stage. And I'm sorry that you went and I wasn't there, but Josh and Bronny, my teammates, would have been there, and it would have been a funny show anyway. But I'm sorry, is my response. Yeah. What's your drawing setup out of interest, guys? Are you to avoid ruining your back? How do you do that?
Avoid it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I avoid it.
Yes.
I'm very particular about my setup because having a healthy back is, for some reason, very much in the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, I'm really so.
So I sit on the yoga ball.
Oh, good.
I'm like that kind of person. I love it. It's my favorite thing to sit on. And I prop up my Cintiq as straight up as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice that if my yoga ball is like slightly deflated and I'm like an inch like too low, I'm like, I can't draw. Yeah. I don't know. It's like, the muscle memory's there.
I'm truly gonna copy that setup. That sounds great. No, it sounds really good.
It's not for everybody though, I will say, but like if you can prop up your drawing screen, like that's the number one thing to do is like,
great.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
I think I have a good sitting butt, and like naturally, and there's a decent amount of padding, and the shape and it's shaped in a way that so that my back isn't bent in a certain way, and I'm not on my tailbone, and that my hips are okay. And I think for me, it's about kind of butt maxing and body maxing, and making sure that just kind of soft sculpting my body with various diets and electromagnetic therapy and stuff like that, and just kind of
playing the long game.
Yeah,
I gotta work on my butt
I just have a good chair. I don't know.
Yeah.
it's kind of as simple as that.
That's smart.
But yeah, I don't know if I have any. I don't know if I have any secrets. I kind of want to get one of. Oh, you know what? I have a I do this thing where like several times a day, I have another station where I sit on my knees, and like I have a beanbag chair, and that so like
cool.
I I would say once an hour I like sit on my knees and slump over this beanbag chair and just like transition just the way that my body is as much as I can.
Mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I have any secrets. Also, this question is neither here nor there. I just wanted I was looking at your Instagram, and I saw you doing stuff with the Auntie Donna fellas.
Yes.
And is that something that you imagine will continue? Do you have anything planned with them? How did that come to be?
That was they own the production company that produced the live action series that I was in and wrote.
Oh, sick!
Yeah, so they are incredibly supportive of emerging comedians, and they me and the comedy group that did the web series, we ran into them at like a lineup show where they were doing a sketch, we were doing a sketch, and very kindly Broden, one of the members, said, "Hey, if you ever want to film anything, send it our way," and we took that very seriously. And we ran home. Sick. We ran home and we came up with a concept, and then we sent it directly to him like a few weeks later. And so, but yeah, they've been so supportive. I write a show, like a live action D&D show that is on their network. And so I work with them, with that company / them a fair bit, and would love to do more in the future. They are, they're the best.
That's awesome.
It's one of the few people, industry people in Australia who don't close doors, but open them up for people. It's very cool.
That's very heartwarming. Good to know.
Yeah.
They're also very funny. So
they're so funny.
We have a question from Haley Tanto from Instagram. When do you get your best comic writing / drawing done? P.S. Longhead is the best. Potato.
Oh. At nighttime, usually. In the dead of night.
Same.
After all my other stuff is done, is when I will think of my silliest business. Usually a bit sleep deprived. What about you guys? When do you do your best long heads?
Same. I'm the same way. Yeah,
no.
I'm a late night guy. I throw my schedule off all the time, and in fact, when I stream on Twitch, a large percentage of my chat is Australian, because I'll stream at like 3 a.m. my time. And
why?
And so funny.
Just, I don't know. I like it. I like it. It's cool. It's cool outside. People aren't texting me. Like, I don't know.
I dude, this is so relatable. That's for me. I do also morning times when I'm being good and I go to the gym really early. Then I have like a little window of like 1 or 2 hours where I can just sit in a coffee shop and like actually just sit down and like just, because for me, if I'm sitting in front of the computer, it's over. I'm just so fucking distracted by all the tabs and the Discord and like, and like getting texts or whatever. So yeah, it's either super early in the morning or it's like late at night as well. Yeah.
Good to know when to contact you. I know you'll be free for both of you. You're gonna regret giving that answer.
No, I love it. I mean, listen, it's fun talking to people. It's fun.
No, I mean, I'm a degenerate. I just my hours are all over the place, and I will stream late at night and then also wake up in the morning at a normal time for work. So it usually depends on like if the motivation strikes, and I listen to that no matter what. And even if it ruins me, even if it's a bad idea, I'll follow that motivation, even if it betrays me.
Well, how lucky are we to have motivation at any point?
I know, right? Yeah.
Sorry, yes, you gotta capture it when it's there. You're like, okay, let's follow this.
That's really true. It's just like a butterfly. You gotta
yes.
catch it. Vigilant Tony is asking, when you drew your first long head, did you know then that you had created something special?
Oh, no. I just thought it was a one-off fellow that would suck on an arm of a PCR test and then I'd never see him again. But he stuck around. I guess in my subconscious I knew.
Tim Chuma from Instagram also asks, how hard is it to come up with an original character these days, given that the barrier for entry for cartoonists for webtoons is so low these days?
Ooh.
That's interesting.
I don't want to invalidate the question.
Just let anyone in nowadays.
I think what they were trying to say is that webtoons, anybody can draw anything and put it online.
Yes.
So that's how I'm taking the question. It's like, anybody can, so, but because everybody's can just post anything anytime.
Yeah. Like how do you stay original? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I didn't really think about that. But in that it just, I don't know.
Are you staying original?
Oh my gosh, I guess body head exists and so does long head. I don't know. How do you do it? I don't know. Well, maybe I've been stumped by this question, or you guys weigh in.
I think stay original?
Yeah, as long as you're true to a part of yourself, it's going to be original.
Yeah,
because
that's a nice way
to all put it. Special.
Because only you could make the thing that you're making. So even if 100 people had made characters with a hand for a head, and I'm sure there's been plenty of characters with a hand for a head, and I see every year I see a new character with a hand for a head. One time, Adult Swim hired me to work as an art director on a pilot, and in the pilot there's a character who's a sock puppet for a head, and he takes off his sock puppet and he has a hand for his head, and I immediately called my manager and I was like, we need to get on the phone with Adult Swim because I think that they had me work on this pilot because I had made Fist Head, and that this is going to be some sort of like if this comes out and in my cartoon with the guy with a fist for a head hasn't come out, what does that mean? And I got like scared, and they got on the phone. They were like, no, it doesn't mean anything. It's fine. But
chill out. Yeah. But I understand that panic. Like, absolutely. The with the games company that I work with, we have it's essentially you're a very long arm that does heists and you're stealing things. But then the game called Thank Goodness You're Here came out, and there's a segment where there is a long arm that bursts out and steals things. And we were playing that, and I had a mild panic attack of like, oh my god, people are going to think we're copying, but we've actually been in development for like literally 3 years. Like, and it doesn't matter. Is the answer. It's fine. You'll do it different enough. Yeah.
Danilik on Instagram asks, what rules or scaffolding do you put around the world of Longhead to keep it weird?
That is the Dan, the EP. So thanks for asking a question, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Appreciate
it.
Hey! The scaffolding is that Longhead is like time and setting agnostic, in that he can be in medieval times one episode and then be in like modern day times the next, and that doesn't really matter. But he is the constant, and that's the kind of rule, and that he never changes, but the world can be affected by him.
That's really funny. It's like he has like this lineage of him.
Yes. Generations of awful men.
But does he have to look the same?
Yeah, his clothes can change a bit. Like in the medieval one, he has one of those like pointy hats. There's like those peasant hats that come down.
Mm-hmm.
But his clothes tend to remain quite similar.
A man of classic style, never out of fashion.
Exactly.
Lucas Coombe asks, Longhead, my arms are longer now. What will be the next body part to become longer?
The arms are longer now is the game that I'm working on. Look, I'm a one-trick pony accidentally.
Long stuff. I like
Long
it.
stuff. That's my production company.
Oh, that's so funny.
Look, I vow that after these two things, I will never do a long thing again because I have to get id of that that thought from people's head that I only do long stuff. That is the answer.
I feel like, what if you had to do a last one? It was like a deal with the devil, and the devil is like, you will get the show of your dreams if you do one last long.
Wow. And the devil's like, I'm a huge fan of your long IPs. Please, one more. Okay, let me think. What's funny to be long? We got arm, we got head. What are the body parts? Oh no. Let me think. I
feel like there's an expected one that we should subvert. We should subvert, and that's not what we're doing.
Exactly. Because we are very intelligent artists, and we never stoop to that level. I think it's tricky. Maybe like a tongue could be fun, like a big lizard.
Ooh, long tongue. That's kind of funny too.
Yeah, rolls
very good.
A long tongue.
I like that.
Yeah.
Tim R. Back, Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
No questions, but I really love Descent. Clap, clap, clap.
Thank you. That's the Auntie Donna web series. Thank you so much.
I'm gonna assume that was their butt cheeks clapping.
Yes.
Yes.
Clap,
they clicked to applaud you.
JJ Chubbs, how do you balance and prioritize the wide variety of projects you have had going lately? That's a really good question.
That's
actually.
From yes, I know that man. That's from Josh. My calendar is used a lot, and I write everything down that I have to do. And every day I start with I have like index cards like this. I don't know. No, you can't see it. I'll draw it on the page. I have an index card like this with lines, and then I have a little to-do tick system. And I write down my things, and every day I cross it off, and anything that doesn't get crossed off goes to the next day, and it's just whack-a-mole of jobs to do. So to make sure everything's running nicely. But yeah, I love a to-do list. How do you guys go with that? What do you do?
Dude, this is so relatable. This is exactly what I do. Except that instead of using index cards, I use post-it notes, and then
cool.
I put them in a notebook when they're done.
Oh, that's nice to keep them. Is it like a little diary sort of documenting your day?
It's become the way I do diaries now, yeah. I think, and sometimes, and I don't know if you ever do that, Millie, but sometimes I'll go back a couple years back and I'll see what was on my to-do list that I never got around to do, and then I'm like, oh, that wasn't actually so bad. That was like a pretty good idea, or like, or that was like a cool project.
Feed your hamster, and it's like just dead.
I got that fish.
We don't talk about the pets.
Yeah. Sorry, cut that.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, that's a great system though. I never thought about keeping them.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you just like throw them in the trash?
Yeah, bad.
For the how'd you call it? Like people like dumpster divers to find.
Yeah, they can follow my career.
Yeah.
It's the only way I can get fans. It's people that dig through my trash.
Yeah.
They grab like a slightly expired salad and an old to-do list.
Yeah, and they're like, oh my gosh. What's she up to?
Brush your teeth. Good.
Yes. Okay.
How granular do you get in your to-do lists?
It's all work. Oh no, sometimes I'll do like clean kitchen, film TikTok, scene breakdown. They're all pretty singular tasks. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do a little. It's nice to check off a box. I like doing that.
Yeah, it's satisfying.
I have little sticky notes. I got these sticky notes that are they're also storyboard panel sticky notes, and they have a layout with like where you write dialogue and stuff, and so potentially
that's so cool.
You can use these and put them on a bulletin board and flip them around all over the place. But I also just use them for little tasks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have been having a harder time multitasking recently.
Where'd you get those from?
They are from a company called Plot Devices.
Oh, fun.
They're storyboard panels, specific sticky notes.
It's funny that you bring that up, Sean, because I've felt the same way recently. I'm just like, I don't know if it's like long COVID or whatever, but I'm like, why is my brain just not, I don't know. Or maybe it's just because I'm like in my mid-30s now, but I was like, my brain is working slower than it used to. I don't know. I know, and then I got existential about it.
I think I don't know you guys intimately, but if I had to guess, I think the world's so bloody crazy. We have so much input constantly that trying to hold everything in your head and do everything is completely unreasonable. And it's having to comprehend, and I don't blame your brain for sometimes being like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I need a rest.
That's a good topic, actually. What's your take on like mental health as like an artist? I mean, I don't know. I always assume that we're all a little bit fucked up if we're like in the arts.
But you do comedy too. So.
I think you're spot on that a lot of sickos are drawn to this profession.
We're so fucked up.
Yeah, we're like Joker brained. But I think there's in the past I've really struggled with my mental health, and for a long time I thought it was like normal to feel like that, particularly like very racing, anxious thoughts in a sort of debilitating way. But honestly, to be quite blunt, once I got medicated, 3 or 4 years ago, it was the best decision I ever made, and there was a period where I really worried that it would take away some artistic ability or ability to come up with ideas or work as hard. Because I'm like, well, my anxiety, like, it makes me really hustle. And I thought that it would take that away and that would be the price for being happy. But it did not at all. In fact, it made me better at what I do because I'm not sad.
That's so interesting, and I'm so glad you bring that up, because this is so real, and it's something that I personally sometimes think about and struggle with. Like some of my therapists have told me like, you should go on SSRIs, and I'm like, no, I will become a zombie. Yes. And to this day I'm unmedicated because I'm too scared.
Yeah, well, really nice. I'm so happy to talk about it then. Of like, I did have that fear, and I will say the first week that I was on meds, I think it was just the brain adjusting to the new chemicals and all of that. But I don't know about your brain, but mine is like a constant internal monologue of like words all the time. And how the anxiety would manifest was just those being really loud and really negative, to a point where I couldn't really focus on anything else and didn't want to be alone and all these things. And so then I started taking the medication, and the immediate first result was that I had no internal monologue, and it was just like static up there. And I was stupider for a week, and I truly thought of, well, this is the price. I'll be dumb forever, but I'll be happy. And then slowly but surely my internal monologue came back, but it was not like really depressed and anxious. It was just like day-to-day things. And it was honestly life-changing. So look, I won't tell anyone to get on meds if they don't have to, but if you've been thinking about it, maybe think about it again. And
you can make it funny or not, but like, can you give us like an example of like the before monologue and the current monologue? Like,
I mean, I don't need to make it funny. It just like anything that I was particularly anxious about, how the kind of imagery that I would tell my partner of like kind of what it felt like in terms of how loud it was like somebody was like firing a machine gun right next to my ear, and nothing else was like would be able to get through. So I'd be like, say, out with friends, but I would be so distracted by what I was thinking and how loud it was that I wouldn't be able to be present or enjoy myself. And an example of how, like, the stuff that it would be like, oh, this person's mad at you. This is the interaction, like replaying the interaction where I thought they were mad at me. This is what you need to say to them next time you see them. No, that won't work. Okay, what about if you tried this? Okay, but this is what they think of you. And just like a bully, essentially, of like, they think you're this, and this, and this, and for that reason you won't do this, and this, and this. And you'll always be like this, blah, 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 blah. But imagine that at that speed, so loud all the time, to a point where you can't really be present or enjoy your life to any extent. And like I said, not want to be alone. That was like the worst part of it. It was like my poor partner Like, I'd be like, can you, like, talk to me while I'm in the shower? And he'd be like, yeah, well, I can, sure. But like, he shouldn't have to do that. Like, he should have some time by himself.
Yeah. No, that's really it's a really great way to illustrate it.
Yeah, and for context now, I will say that have that anxious thought, but it won't stick. Like the imagery that I'll tell people is like, it feels more like a wind tunnel, and the anxious thought will like maybe stick to the wall for a little second of like, hey, I wonder if this person's mad at you. But now it's way easier to be like, well, cool, next time I see them, I'll check in with them, and then it goes to the back. I can go about my day, and it doesn't distract me or make me not present.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Would recommend living like this.
And this episode of Creative Block is sponsored by Xanax.
Lexapro.
We got Big Pharma to sponsor us, honestly.
I'll take Big Pharma money.
Yeah. From Twitter, this is kind of a funny question. At Dig88 asks, what is the funniest thing you've done?
Ever?
Yes.
That is such a funny question. I thought
a funny question.
I really like that question.
To you or to other people?
No.
What I've witnessed? What is the funniest thing I've done? So hear this question. I think.
What's the funniest thing that you've done that you wish like people saw, but like maybe you were either alone or like no one caught it?
Like little jokes for me. I think that, can I say the funniest thing that I witnessed that I can remember?
Let's do it.
And it was when I was 5 years old. I really peaked early. I'm still chasing the high. But I went to a theme park we have called Movie World, which is equivalent of Disneyland, but way shitter. And all these movie characters walk around, including Foghorn Leghorn. Are you familiar with the man?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, with the rooster?
Yes.
So, yeah. Foghorn, the mascot, was walking around and I saw him fall over and his leg came off. And at the time I was in tears and my mum was laughing. And I was yelling at my mum, like, don't! Like, because I thought it was like a real, I don't know, creature.
That's so funny.
And now I can appreciate that is really funny.
Like, you were coming to grips with mortality. At that moment, exactly. You were like, death exists!
And your leg can just pop off its socket with nobody, and
that's
nobody
so scary.
will help. Yeah.
People will just stand around and laugh. That's the worst part.
I guess it's learning that, like, this world is inherently cruel, maybe. So that's the funniest thing I've witnessed ever, in retrospect.
So funny.
What about you? What's the funniest thing you've ever done, guys?
That question is crazy.
It's so funny. It's such a funny question. I'm trying to think of, like...
So there's a particularly, like, Curb Your Enthusiasm style moment that I had once that I don't know if it's funny as much as it is. I mean, it's kind of fucked up. But I was at the airport and I got into an Uber, but it was not my Uber. And I could, and it took me a second to figure out that what the person in the front seat was saying to me is that you're in the wrong car.
That's really good.
So I opened the door and a semi-truck took off the door.
That is so scary.
And then, so the door just flew off, and then this big trucker ran over and started yelling at the driver, and they got out and they were arguing. And as they were arguing, I snuck into my Uber and I left.
You fled the scene of the crime.
And I fled. So, like I said, I don't know if I think that, like, in the grand scheme of things, that is a crazy series of events that, without thinking about the repercussions of that poor Uber driver whose car I got into and all of that stuff, that's kind of a ridiculous thing.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
I guess I have a similar story, but in a way, and it's looking back, it's pretty funny, I guess.
You were
But
in a
it's
semi truck and
I was in a
you hit
semi
someone's door
truck,
off.
and no, I was actually riding a bicycle in Japan because I lived in Japan for 1 year, and I knew it was a bad bike because I knew I had to get the brakes fixed.
Oh no.
But
Oh.
I just kind of kept putting it off because I just kind of always kind of managed it. And one day I was just riding my bike, and this
Oh.
little old lady, probably 65, also riding a bicycle, and she's riding it. No, here's the thing. She's riding it extremely slowly, but I didn't see her come at me because it was like she just appeared from behind a wall. And I brake the hardest I could, but the brakes were not good. So the bike just went slower and slower and slower. And it was the slowest collision you could have ever witnessed. But she still fell over.
Oh no.
But it all happened in slow motion where I was just like, because I think she was so old, that's why she fell. I think if it was like somebody who was like they wouldn't have fallen.
Yes.
But then, and I didn't speak Japanese well enough. So I tried to I'm so sorry. And I tried to help her out, but I think she saw me as like a gaijin, and she was like, I don't trust this person. And then this little old man came in, like, and it was like also he was like 65 or whatever, like both of them.
It's just old people, just
old people, and she
story.
was so shaken.
Oh.
And I was just like, I can't talk to anybody. And I'm trying to talk to them, but they don't understand me.
Yeah.
And then so then eventually I was like, I don't know what to do. And eventually I just left.
You have to. Yeah, you did your best.
You just have to leave. You have to abandon the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I tried. It was the slowest collision, the slowest fall, and the slowest giving up on the situation. It was just everything slow motion.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Crashing into stuff is usually kind of funny. Like maybe not a car, but I remember my biggest rollerblade accident. I mean, first of all, I feel like rollerblades, it's automatically like kind of a funny thing, but I remember my friends were going down this huge hill, but they had rollerblades on too, but they were walking on the grass on the sides, and I don't know why I decided to go down the hill, but I started skating down the hill, and like I started going much faster, and I was like, oh no, and then I was like, okay, maybe if I bend down a whole lot more, like I'll be closer to the ground, it won't hurt as much if I fall. But that meant that I started going really, 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 really fast. And then I was like, oh, like maybe I can slow down if I like swerve from side to side a little bit, like zigzagging, which just meant that I was unsteady. And so it was this huge hill with just a hard just gravel at the bottom. And I just remember zooming down, and at that time my nickname was Pom Pom from Homestar Runner because I was a little chubby kid, and I just remember I feel like I hit that gravel, and I remember flying through the air like 10 feet, like it was like the furthest I'd ever. It's probably the most I've ever been airborne, just like slow mo. And I remember being in the air and having my friends go pom pom and just eating shit and just like fucking like getting so messed up from all the gravel. So yeah, I guess something like that.
What injuries did you sustain?
I think I was just like everything was just super skinned. I didn't like break anything.
Oh yeah.
That's nice. But what a shame you didn't have anything to block you.
Yes.
And
like an old woman.
Like an old woman.
Speaking of blocking me.
Speaking of blocking Sean, this podcast is called Creative Block. And we like to ask our guests, have you ever dealt with creative block, Millie? And if yes, how'd you handle it?
This metaphor doesn't totally work because the block was supposed to be in this story. It would have been helpful to be blocked, but
in this question, it's a very anti-helpful type of block.
in a bad block sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, of course I have. There's one particular time that stands out. I was doing my like an extra honors year of uni because you could get like the student allowance from our Centrelink, which is like, I don't know what your equivalent is, but essentially you get some money each week because you're a student, and I wanted to continue that. And so I did an extra little year of uni, and I was writing a script, and it was kind of the first time in a long time where it just like wasn't working. The idea was like a bit of a flop. Like it was very cookie cutter, and I didn't know how to make it good, and every time I would go to it, it would suck. And the answer to that, and this isn't relevant for all forms of creative block, was that I changed the format from live action to animation and willingly threw out the protagonist. And I think that was like, maybe at that time I wasn't going logline first, and I changed it to a logline that was way better and way funnier, and then I built it from the ground up. So I guess the answer is don't be afraid to throw away everything. And or something else when I'm writing, just if I do like the idea and I'm mid-script and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do in this scene, I'll just skip it and go back later when I have more of an idea. Being okay to like just drop it until you're feeling up for it is fine. You don't have to sit in the sludge for too long.
That's great. That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
It's good writing advice for sure.
Anything you want to plug? Anything?
Yes, Longhead, please. You've seen him so much in these drawings, I think. Too much. But yeah, there's 3 more episodes coming out, but if you want to see the ones that are already out, at This Is Longhead on TikTok is where they all are. So please like, comment, share, engage the beautiful algorithm. Yes, that would be the main thing. Or just my Instagram, at Millie Holten.
Very good. Very good. And with that, make sure you check out Longhead on TikTok and at Millie Holten on Instagram. With that, that's the end of this creative block. Millie, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a relaxing, fun time. I'll do it anytime you want.
And thanks to our listeners, too. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting out.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to our Discord community. Click the link in the description of this episode to follow Millie on all of her socials and to get access to her Patreon. Another great way you can support this show for free is to like, comment, share, all that good stuff, subscribe. Yeah. I was your host, V.
And I was Sean. Keep making stuff long, and we'll see you next week.
Well done.
Bye.
Bye.